Hello and welcome to this jazz guitar lesson. I'm Chris Whiteman and thanks for joining me. This lesson is part 3 of a 3-part series where we've been building a walking bass line and adding comping simultaneously to Autumn Leaves in the key of G minor. In part 1 we focused on just the bass line. In part 2 we added some comping with shell voicings. And here in part 3 we're going to add the element of syncopation to our comping. I think of syncopation as rhythmic tension, and it's an essential element of jazz rhythm. To create the syncopation, we're going to move our comping attacks off of the downbeats and place them on upbeats. We're in 4/4 time, so the downbeats are beats 1, 2, 3, and 4, and the upbeats are going to be the end of each beat. So 1N, 2N, 3N, 4N, so those are your upbeats. In part 2, all of the comping attacks aligned with the quarter notes of the bass line. There were no rhythms other than quarter notes falling on downbeats, so there was no syncopation anywhere. So today we're going to look at how to place the attacks on the upbeats. And there are basically 2 ways we can do this. The first way is to move the attack up by an 1/8 note, and we call this an anticipation. And let me give you an example. So if I'm going to strike a bass note and the chord together on beat 1, it's going to sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, striking together. Now, to create the anticipation, I want to hit the chord before the bass note. And so I have to precede beat 1 by an 1/8 note, which is going to put the chordal attack on the end of 4. And it's going to sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1. And so I'm just pulling up with my index and my middle on the 7th and the 3rd of the shell voicing of C minor, and then striking the bass on beat 1. Now the other way we can create syncopation is with a delay. We can put the attack after the downbeat. So bass note first, and then on the end of 1, I'm striking the 3rd and the 7th of the chord. And that's going to sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and 2, 3, 4, 1, and 2. Right, so simple concept, right? We're just either anticipating or delaying. All right, there are a few things I want to mention about this exercise before we look at it. The first is that this is a very basic introduction to this concept, so we're going to be limiting our use of syncopation to beat 1. So either anticipation or delay of beat 1. And as I mentioned earlier, the anticipation of beat 1 is the end of beat 4, and the delay of beat 1 is the end of beat 1. These are not the only options for syncopation. Syncopation can happen on any beat, but just for this lesson, we're going to kind of limit it here as an introduction. The other thing I want to mention is that good supportive comping usually has a balance between anticipations, delays, and downbeats. In this exercise, we have more syncopations than we have downbeats, and we have more anticipations than delays. This is not a mathematical formula, but we're being analytical in this exercise. But after you absorb this concept and become fluent with syncopation, when you're in a performing situation, it's not something that you intellectually think about. It's a rhythmic language that begins to organically flow, and you're intuitively playing in a way that makes the music feel good. Whoever you're comping for, you want to make it feel good. One more element that impacts the feel of the comping that I want to mention is the duration of the attack. And you'll notice in this exercise, I have very short attacks from an 1/8 note all the way up to longer sustained attacks up to dotted half notes. So that's another balance that you can play with to help make it feel better. Okay, I'm going to pull up a drum track and I'm going to play through the exercise at 120 beats per minute and then again at 60 beats per minute. All right, thanks so much for joining me. I hope you found this information useful, and I'll see you next time.